Wealth dripped from every corner of the mansion, yet one room stayed cloaked in quiet darkness. Inside lay a boy who had never seen the world, not the blue of the sky, not the face of his own father. Doctors called a hopeless, a cruel twist of fate for the son of a millionaire. But when a new maid arrived, whispers of change stirred. She carried no medical degree, only a secret past and hands that held something the family could never buy. What happened when she touched his eyes defied every explanation and exposed truths the household wished to bury. Could a single touch unravel generations of prejudice? From the outside, the Whitmore estate looked like a place where nothing bad could ever happen. Gleaming marble floors, gardens clipped to perfection, and a staff trained to move like shadows. Inside, 10-year-old Andrew Whitmore lived in a world of muffled footsteps and endless night. Born blind, he memorized the house by touch and sound, the cool brass of the banister, the echo of his father's voice drifting from business calls. His father, Charles, measured life in investments and power, convinced money could bend reality to his will. Specialists flew in from every corner of the globe, each promising a cure and leaving with another quiet failure. Andrew's mother had long since retreated into charity events and polite smiles, leaving a loneliness that no tutor or nurse could fill. When the new housemaid arrived, a black woman named Clara, her presence barely rippled the household's careful surface. But something in the way she greeted Andrew, a warmth unbothered by the rules of the mansion, lingered like a spark. She carried stories in her voice and a calm that unsettled the rigid order Charles demanded. Neither of them knew it yet, but Clara's arrival would expose more than the limits of science. It would unearth a prejudice buried deep in the family's wealth and history, a quiet cruelty that had survived behind those polished walls. And the moment her hands would one day rest against Andrew's eyes was already set in motion, an encounter that would challenge everything the Whitmores believed about power, healing, and who truly sees. Days turned into weeks, and Clara's quiet presence began to fill the mansion in ways no one expected. She read aloud to Andrew while the house slept, her voice carrying warmth through the cold marble halls. She guided him to the gardens, letting him feel the texture of leaves and the sun on his face. For the first time, he sensed a world beyond darkness. But every moment of connection drew sharp glances from the rest of the staff. Whispers slithered through the corridors about Clara's skin, her unusual methods, the impropriety of a servant spending so much time with the heir. Charles heard them too. He dismissed them at first, until neighbors began to talk. At a dinner party, someone murmured that the millionaire's son was being raised by a maid, the word made sharpened like a blade. One afternoon, Charles appeared unannounced in the garden. He watched Clara guide Andrew's fingers over the delicate veins of a rose. His voice cut the air like a whip. "Enough of this nonsense," he said, the chill in his tone unmistakable. "My son doesn't need fairy tales. He needs discipline." Clara bowed her head, but did not step back. Andrew gripped her hand tighter, sensing the storm he could not see. From that day, restrictions fell like heavy doors. Clara's time with Andrew was cut to brief moments, an hour to dust his room, a few stolen minutes to whisper a story before bedtime. Yet the boy's world had already shifted. He dreamed of color and light he had never known, and when Clara returned, he begged for more. Clara began to teach Andrew simple exercises, small touches meant to awaken senses he'd been told were useless. She rubbed a warm herbal salve over his closed eyelids, its scent of earth and citrus lingering long after she left. Andrew felt tingles he couldn't explain, like the faintest flicker of light beneath his skin. When Charles discovered the salve, the tension cracked open. "What is this?" he demanded, holding the jar as though it were poison. Clara explained it was an old remedy from her grandmother, a tradition of healing passed down through generations. Charles's face hardened. "This house will not be a place for superstition," he snapped. "You are here to clean, not to play doctor." Clara stood silent, but inside the air thickened with something unspoken, a truth heavier than any accusation. Andrew clung to her skirt, his voice small but steady. "Please, father. It helps." Charles turned away, his silence more dangerous than his words. That night, he ordered the salve thrown away. Yet the scent lingered in the boy's memory, a quiet rebellion. The next morning, Andrew woke to a faint shimmer behind his eyelids, a glow that danced like fireflies. He didn't tell anyone. Not yet, because he knew the mansion was no longer just a home. It was a cage of wealth and fear, where every attempt to reach beyond darkness threatened to break something far older than his blindness. And something inside him whispered that the next touch could change everything, or destroy what little freedom they had left. A storm rolled across the estate the night. Everything broke open. Thunder rattled the glass as Andrew lay awake, the faint shimmer behind his eyelids stronger than ever. He could almost see the flashes of lightning, impossible yet undeniable. When Clara slipped quietly into his room to check on him, he whispered, trembling, "It's brighter tonight." Before she could answer, the door burst wide. Charles stood there, rain streaking his face, fury sharp enough to cut the dark. In his hand was the discarded jar of salve, found hidden in the garden soil. "You defy me in my own house," he thundered. "You dare fill my son's head with this witchcraft." Clara straightened, her eyes steady despite the storm inside the room. "I only offered comfort," she said softly. "Something your money could never buy." Charles crossed the space in 2 strides, his shadow swallowing them both. "You people," he hissed, the words dripping with centuries of disdain. "You think you can touch what isn't yours." Andrew's heart pounded, so hard he felt it in his fingertips. For the first time, he understood the weight of a silence deeper than darkness, the silence of power used as a weapon. Clara did not move. Instead, she placed her hands gently over Andrew's eyes, her touch warm and unshaken. "See what you choose to see," she whispered. A searing flash pulsed through Andrew's vision. Colors, real, wild colors, exploded behind his lids. He gasped, the world rushing toward him like a breaking wave. Shapes sharpened, the outline of Clara's face, the hard glint of his father's eyes. Charles staggered back, disbelief washing into something colder than rage. Lightning cracked overhead, and for a heartbeat the room glowed as if the sky itself demanded witness. Andrew blinked, the impossible now undeniable. And in that breathless moment, the walls of wealth and prejudice that had bound their lives began to fracture, leaving only the question of what would shatter next. The storm passed, but the echoes of that night never left the Whitmore estate. Andrew's sight did not vanish with the lightning. It sharpened in the days that followed, each sunrise revealing colors he once only imagined. Yet the true awakening belonged to more than his eyes. Charles tried at first to explain away, science, chance, anything that kept control in his hands. But every glance at Clara unsettled him. Her quiet strength had exposed a truth his wealth could never cover. Healing had entered his house through someone he once saw as lesser. The power he guarded so fiercely had crumbled in a single, undeniable moment. Clara stayed, not as a servant, but as a presence too essential to dismiss. Neighbors gossiped. Some whispered miracles, others muttered insults sharpened by fear. But Andrew heard it all with new clarity. He saw how prejudice worked, how it hid behind polite smiles and careful words, how it tried to rewrite what everyone had witnessed. For the first time, Charles listened. He watched his son reach for Clara's hand in daylight, unashamed. He heard Andrew speak of what he had learned in darkness, that worth is not measured in wealth or skin, but in the courage to care when no one else will. This story is more than one family's reckoning. It is a reminder of how racism blinds entire generations, convincing them that love and wisdom must fit within walls of privilege. And it asks all of us, what truths are we refusing to see because they arrive in a form we have been taught to ignore? If this moment moved you, share it. Start a conversation that refuses silence. Because real sight, the kind that changes the world, begins when we open our eyes to one another and never look away.